Okay then, and we are live now. So, yes, welcome to the third episode of the Trans Agenda, a show in which we discuss the trans news in an inclusive manner that expresses the full range of trans people's humanity. My name is Ethel, they, she pronouns, and I'm joined today by Essence of the Four editor, Levi from A Levi Called Bird YouTube channel. Levi goes by he,
Hi.
him pronouns. Sorry. We've got quite a few topics today. Not much housekeeping, thankfully, so it means we can get straight into the fact that the BBC has effectively banned members of its staff from attending Pride. We have the discussion around the UK government launching an inquiry into the GRA reform proposals and consultation. We have a story centering in America around the facts that a mother of a 8-year-old trans girl who asked Joe Biden about trans rights at a rally has been bombarded with hate and death threats. Then we jump across to Australia and the fact that the Lord Mayor of Perth received massive backlash over transphobic comments. Then we finish up with some rather positive stories coming from my corner of the world. The state of Assam changed its civil service applications to allow trans applicants, and the city of Noida changes the name of one of its metro stations here in just across the river from Delhi to Pride Station. So hopefully it'll be an interesting show for you lot.
Oh, Pride Station is near Delhi. You must show me Pride Station sometime.
I'll take you to Pride Station. It's literally just across the river. I'll
Yes.
explain exactly where Noida is. Again, as housekeeping, there's not that much really to go over. Just the basics. Before we can begin, we'd just like to make a couple of things clear, starting with the fact that we are fallible and therefore we make mistakes. If you notice anything we've got wrong, feel free to message us during or after the show, and we'll be more than happy to update the stream description to include any errors. Likewise, whilst we attempt to compile a list of content warnings for the topics we'll cover, posting them to the very top of the description of the show, there's always the possibility that we may miss one or two. So just as with mistakes, if you think we're missing any relevant content warnings, feel free to suggest it so we can then update the current list. So with that, about the only other thing I want to mention is the fact that I am trying to take timestamps. I was meaning to take timestamps anytime we moved on to a new topic last time. I completely forgot. So in the spirit of pantomime, anytime we talk about moving on to the next topic, if the lovely people in the chat could just scream out timestamps, that would be very helpful in conditioning me for future shows to remember to do the timestamps. We take the timestamps so we can put them in the stream description, just so people who come along later don't have to watch the whole thing. They can just pick the topic specifically that they want, watch that topic, and then they can go away. It just makes it more accessible to different people. It means they can skip over topics that they feel they may not be able to deal with that day. In general, it's just an accessibility aid. It just makes everything nicer for everyone as well. So yes, if you could help us out in that way, that would be greatly appreciated. Is there anything you wanted to add to housekeeping?
Uh, Not really.
Okay. And that will be 12:40. Will be the end of the housekeeping. So I'm just going to do that timestamp before I forget. So the first story of tonight, our leading story, which is in the title of the stream, is the UK government. Oh, sorry. No, this is the BBC
Actually,
banned staff members from attending Pride. Sorry, you were going to say
sorry,
something?
sorry. Yeah, I've just learned something about housekeeping. I was going to try and take timestamps as well, just in case, but I can't because the video is on a lag for me.
Yeah,
So the time is just wrong.
yes, that's why I'm doing it. I just need you people to remind me to do it. So anyway,
I'll try and remember to remind you, but knowing me, that's not going to work at all.
okay. So yes, the first topic of tonight is the BBC banned staff members from attending Pride, something that has received quite a bit of coverage recently, for very good reason. So, this whole thing the whole story broke out when iNews, specifically journalist Benjamin Butterworth, ran a story titled BBC staff told attending LGBT Pride protests in any capacity can breach new impartiality rules. Um, Now, the rules in general are highly conservative. If you don't know, the BBC has become more and more conservative over the past decade or so. Like, it was already pretty conservative to begin with, but it's got far worse recently. Specifically when it comes to trans issues, it's become quite heinous in the way and the coverage that it has, etc. So this sort of move doesn't surprise us. But yes, the story broke about new impartiality guidelines, which stated that BBC staff members, specifically those in the field of news reporting, were not allowed to attend any protests which may violate their impartiality. Now, this led to concerns by staff members about Pride, because Pride is a protest. So a bunch of staff members asked, is it okay to go to Pride? What exactly counts as a protest versus a celebratory thing? And the responses ranged quite a bit. Someone was told explicitly on the phone that they were not allowed to attend Manchester Pride. Another individual was told that it became a protest if there were trans issues involved, which became a focal point of a lot of the Twitter activity and the people criticizing the new policies. So the whole thing really just blew up from there, and people were really concerned about the state of queer members of staff at the BBC. The facts that this seemed to be a move that effectively legislated them into hiding, or that they couldn't, defend their existence, really. And this is not the only thing that has happened at the time. At the same time, the BBC has also been caught posting, responses, balancing the issue on any LGBT plus positive article it has, in which they have invited a vocal transphobe to have their say on any trans positive article. So the whole thing has just thrown the BBC into sort of disarray over this whole issue, with members of staff confused as to what exactly the policy does and does not include. Unsurprisingly, what was his name? BBC director Tim Davies went out to clarify the issue in an email which was shared to Twitter by Scott Bryan, stating that, quote, "Dear all, thank you all for your support in rolling out the editorial guidance on impartiality yesterday. This new guidance and the rules around social media activity are significant steps in renewing our commitment to impartiality and securing the trust our audience have in us. There is one specific issue I want to make sure that there is no room for misinterpretation following inaccurate commentary and some feedback from staff, which is the ability to participate in Pride parades. There is no ban on attending Pride parades. The guidance that we published yesterday made it very clear that staff outside of news and current affairs and factual journalism may attend marches, demonstrations and protests as private individuals. I have copied below the relevant extract of the guidance for reference." Now this is where it gets interesting. There are different considerations for staff who work in news and current affairs and factual journalism, and senior leaders. But I want to be clear, there is no issue for these staff attending community events that are clearly celebratory and commemorative, and do not compromise perceptions of their impartiality. If news and current affairs staff are participating in such events, they must be mindful of ensuring that they do not get involved in matters which could be deemed political or controversial. There is no ban on these staff attending Pride events. Attending Pride parades is possible within the guidelines, but due care needs to be given to the guidance, and staff need to ensure that they are not seen to be taking a stand on politicised or controversial issues. Protecting the BBC's impartiality is the core of everything we do. We must ensure that we avoid doing anything that endangers audience perceptions of the BBC's impartiality, and protect the ability of staff in news and current affairs to report fairly and impartially. Sorry, this is getting me quite a bit. Do drop me a line if you have any questions about this, or speak to your manager. This right here, that little bit where it starts getting interesting, okay, it's not a general ban on staff, But when it comes to the news team and the factual reporting, etc., there is a band there. A big part of it to explain is the fact that pride is political. It's inherently political. At best, what this says is Tim Davies has no idea about what pride is. That's being generous to him. At best, this says that he thinks pride is just this parade, a sort of Mardi Gras sort of thing. That's not the case. Bisexual people face extreme levels of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. Gay people are still being assaulted in the streets. Trans people are having their very existence challenged day in, day out. You know, equality wasn't won with marriage equality. So pride is inherently political. What's more is who sets the guidelines for what is politicized and what isn't. Again, staff who asked to clarify this were told that trans issues are politicized, and therefore if they attend an event which discusses trans issues, which LGBT plus pride is going to do, there's a reason there's a T in there, that's a problem. What this has effectively done is drag the staff at the BBC back to a time where you could be fired if you were found to be a member of the LGBT plus community. Because now they have to wonder, instead of just being, okay, if I go to this pride event, will I be recognised by someone and it gets back to my boss and I'm fired? It's a case of, okay, if I go to this event, will someone report it as being partial? Will they press it that I was there, I was protesting, that it violates my impartiality, etc.? So they're effectively forced out of the pride sphere because there is no clear guidance. The whole, oh, you can attend so long as it's not political, that it's celebratory and commemorative, that's more of a threat than anything. It reminds me a lot of those bullies who tell you to go ahead and do something, and you can tell from the smile that they have on their face that the moment you do something, they're going to turn that around and hurt you. Like, if I was working at the BBC, I don't know what I'd do. Like, would I go ahead and just, avoid pride in general? Because there's always a chance that someone might see me, someone might recognize me, someone might report me as being partial. Because that's the thing. It is so open to interpretation that this allows for an incredible amount of abuse of power. So yes, those people have effectively been told, if you go to Pride, you could very well lose your job. So it may not be a strict ban of, you can't attend Pride, but in practicality, effectively, it is a ban. I don't know if you have anything to add, Levi.
Oh, I have things to add.
Yes,
I have things to add. This scares me, not just because of the current issues that have just been laid out, but also I keep thinking about the logic behind these impartiality guidelines, and there are wider implications which really scare me. You think about, why is it that you're not allowed to go to pride events that have, trans issues being included in them? It's because trans people, our very existence is extremely contentious right now. If I say I have a non-binary friend, to a lot of people, that's this horrible political statement. Oh, how dare you say non-binary people exist? And it makes me think, not only does this mean that people who work for the BBC can't go to Pride, but how could a trans person work for the BBC? Mm-hmm. You say, Ethel, if I worked for the BBC, and I'm thinking, but could you even work for the BBC? Because your very existence is contentious to a huge portion of their audience. They're going to be really offended.
It is going to freeze them out. I was talking more about the people who already worked in the BBC. Those that have survived years of terrible takes of inviting ignorant, washed-up comedians on for their shit takes and pretending that is impartiality.
Yeah. Well, see, it goes beyond trans people. What about cis queer people as well? Their existence is contentious. I worry about the implications for BIPOC, for neurodivergent people, disabled people, even women, anyone whose existence or basic rights are even remotely contentious. Because reading through these guidelines, it was very clear to me the issue here was not uh, it wasn't about impartiality. It was about pandering, about being milquetoast and inoffensive and living
Yeah.
up to the status quo. They are not interested in trying not to like enforce any particular viewpoint. They are interested in violently holding to the status quo because that is inoffensive to the majority of people.
To steal from Terry Pratchett, this is no longer news, this is old. This is about reinforcing what you've always known about, the trans community, etc. It's the same with Tim Davies, again, is the one who's come under fire, come under flack for the stories being balanced with some random transphobe commentator.
This is highlighted brilliantly by... did we discuss the poppies yet?
We haven't discussed the poppies. We are going to go on to discuss the poppies in a second. Because I was going to say, you mentioned people of colour, and yes, that will come up in a second. So
this is... I was going to go on to the poppies. So do you want me to explain the poppies, or do you want to explain the poppies?
Well, first of all, we need to discuss how the poppies came up.
Go on then.
And that is with Femi Uluwal questioned the BBC's impartiality on the grounds that whilst the policy very specifically uses the fascist it's not really a dog whistle, it's more of a buzzword at this point, the fascist buzzword virtue signalling, as what you need to avoid is virtue signalling. They were pointing out, how come the BBC enforces all of its presenters to wear poppies during Remembrance Month? And how come that's seen as impartiality, but any other politics like Black Lives Matter, which was their main one, and they did mention the LGBT plus community, how come these are political and conscientious? Sadly for Femi, this resulted in him receiving a extortionate amount of abuse on Twitter. There is a lot of nationalism in the UK poppy sphere. There's a lot of white nationalists, and if you question anything about standards, etc., and how they're framed, they will seek you out. It's kind of like it's kind of like British exceptionalism. If you've been to America and you've seen American exceptionalism, and anytime you criticize America as a country and people get really defensive about it, in the UK, poppies have the same sort of sacred appeal.
Doesn't that make them basically a white supremacist symbol?
We'll come back to that in a second. We'll come back to that in a second. However, Femi was then invited onto a morning show to discuss the issue. And the thing is that they wore a poppy when they went on. They said the poppy isn't the issue. The issue I have is the fact that the BBC is pushing its presenters to wear this one symbol to show their virtues, to virtue signal, if you will. But when it comes to Black Lives Matter and queer issues, suddenly that's an issue. And he says, isn't that partiality? You're showing that one of these political symbols is fine, but the other two, which are about people existing, that's up for debate. And if you go, the last link we actually have in this section of the story is actually a link to a post by Femi, which has clips from the show. And he just stands there as this vocal bigot. Carol Malone just goes on and on about the fact that poppies are not at all political. How can you say that? To which he responds, okay, well, why is the statement that Black Lives Matter any more political then? And she goes, well, it's not. But people view that as conscientious. Why? And he just runs circles around her as she even says, when I wear a poppy, I am telling people. So you're making a statement. No, I'm not making a statement, but you just said I'm telling people. And all of this just sort of came to a point where it's just like, it just shows that the BBC is not doing this because they actually care about impartiality. If they did that, they would have stopped inviting uninformed, washed up hack comedians on to talk about a medical issue, specifically in relation to the medicalization of trans children. They wouldn't have done that.
It does make me laugh, actually, how they're like, oh, for factual journalism, we have these special standards, and this factual journalism doesn't seem to have a lot of facts. That's the one thing I'd expect them to adhere to, is facts. And they don't seem to want to do that, do they?
But the thing is, the whole lie behind this is the idea that the poppies are not political. Go to the mainland UK, they're accepted. You know, in Great Britain, they're typically accepted. Go to Northern Ireland, however, and they are very political. In Northern Ireland, for those who don't know, due to the violence in the Troubles in which British soldiers shot and murdered civilians, the poppy has become associated with that, specifically with nationalist groups. So wearing a poppy is political, and that is why they have petitioned the BBC in the past for forcing its presenters to wear them, because they see it as a violation of impartiality when covering Irish news. So it's amazing that this is the one that they sort of go to, oh, well, it's not a big issue. And it's like, talk to someone who is in a country that the UK has invaded, that has bombed, etc. It changes. Of course, those of us who have grown up in a society where we've been constantly indoctrinated into the idea that the poppy is this virtuous symbol, lest we forget, you know, of course people who have been raised in that sort of society their entire life are going to have a positive perception of it compared to Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, etc. Of course they are. But that's the thing. That's a lie, you know. The poppy has never been lest we forget, it's always been lest we remember. Lest we remember the facts that the millions of people who died in the fields on the continent died not out of some glorious great war, they died as a victim of colonial brutality. That is why the First World War happened. Colonial friction between various different countries that had powers all around the world. That's why it happened. That's why they died. It wasn't virtuous, it wasn't great, but we've become so wrapped up in the idea of this poppy that the language we use to refer to it, the poppy has become so detached from the horror of the war that it used to once represent. And that has just allowed white nationalist groups, etc., to come in and just seize upon it and just use it to propagate their narratives. There's a reason people use the white poppy when they complain about migrants coming here. You know, oh, we have veterans on the street, we can't take migrants, you know. There's a reason they turn to that. It's not an actual care for those veterans, because, by the way, I should note, my criticism of the poppy and how it's become institutionally is not a criticism of the soldier. The soldier's a victim in all of this. They're a victim of a system that has taught them to hate people across sea for no fucking reason, to bomb their homes, etc. Many of them suffer PTSD as a result, and they're just abandoned by the government. I came from Aldershot, that's where I've lived the last few years, and there are quite a few homeless veterans out there, totally abandoned by the government. So it's kind of disgusting then to see the idea that, oh, it's a pure symbol that nobody can disagree with, no one could criticize, and it's like, that just doesn't hold up in the slightest. I'm sorry. That was a big rant. I had a lot to say on that. I don't know if you have anything to add. Levi?
I got distracted for a second by my phone showing up. I'm sorry. I'm so professional.
That's fine. But yes.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I would love to add some things to the thing about everything you said about the poppies, but I mean, you covered it really well. I could do a whole soliloquy about how I'm disillusioned with the Anzac things here. I guess the one thing I will say is I've always felt, ever since I was a child, I've always felt like reverence for things like the poppy and Anzac Day, which is also a World War One thing. Um, I felt like we are told that we're supposed to remember the horrors of war so they never happen again. But what we're actually taught is to have reverence for soldiers in the military and to not actually learn anything about war is like, or what war is like, or why it happens. And, I suspect the reason they do that is because teaching you that war is horrible and bad and you should never do it is a very bad way to have new soldiers. Very bad way to get new soldiers.
I mean, like the whole reason Britain really got involved with this First World War, yes, everything was triggered by the assassination, but Germany had been trying to copy Britain in a lot of its things. Like, we built the dreadnought and they copied us. Germany was getting rather agitated about the fact that in Africa their territories were mostly along the Saharan band, compared to the UK, which had the luxurious areas. So Britain kind of used the First World War as a way to put Germany in its place, because it was trying to grow. So again, and I say this, like Sergeant Stonehouse, Sergeant John Stonehouse was my great grandfather. Died at the River Somme, got blown up. He lost his leg first, then he got taken onto a stretcher, and then the stretcher bearers and him were again hit by another shell, and that was the last any of them were seen. Like, this is not something I say completely ignorant of my history, of my past. They didn't need to die. There was no fucking good reason for them to die. And we can't also deny the fact that what happened in the First World War created the environment in Germany that then allowed the repeated coup to happen, because there was coup after coup, the left wing seized, the right wing seized, and then who came along? Well, a rather nasty individual by the name of Adolf Hitler. It set the ground for the Second World War. It allowed him to talk about the glory days of, before the First World War, and how, the country has been disgraced, we've been stripped of our military, these outsiders have come in, they've dictated us, we are lesser than them, we should all rise up. That's what we created through the First World War. We can't deny that fact. So, yeah.
Yeah, Poppy's very political. Much more political than trans people should be.
Yeah. But that's not the convenient narrative for the BBC, because, again, the people in the BBC has been getting more conservative, and the Conservatives love war, so they love the shield that the Poppy acts as, because, again, anytime you criticise war, this is something we see in America as well, it's seen as criticising the soldiers. Oh, you can't dare say anything about the unjust atrocity which is creating the refugee crisis, which the very same people who defend the war then cry about the refugee crisis, you can't say anything about that.
It's more than that, though.
We have a $5 super chat. When they talk horrors of war, they focus on soldiers and make them heroes. They shy away from civilians, especially in the war zone. That is true. That's actually something I thought of, I was meant to talk about, but I forgot. Because, yes, war, of course, drains all sorts of resources. And, again, innocent lives are lost. Every war that is created drains us from resources that we could be using to tackle other things, like poverty and climate change. Because, yes, it's just, Oh, it's really depressing. I'm sorry. More from Peterborough. Isn't it strange that World War One and World War Two aren't brought up, including colonial horrors? Like, seriously, never heard much about India in World War Two until recently. Yes, I've been doing some research about this specifically in Bengal, because Adita's Bengali. Vita's my wife, for those who don't know. For those who don't know, several million Bengalis were starved as a direct consequence of Winston Churchill's policy. And all of the excuses given are such horrific lies. Like, people say, oh, Bengal was on the front line. okay, there was a stretch to the south of Bengal that was on the front line, but it isn't actually on the major front line. Most of the land front line is of a different place, because it's actually the part that Japan actually tried invading. It was the Battle of Imphal. Manipur, the state of Manipur. Manipur is mostly in front of Bengal. It's like an entire state in front of it. So Bengal wasn't in the front line except for the small bit down south. Yes, it had the coast, but by that logic, Britain was also the front line, and should also, be denied its food and policy. There's also ignored the facts that the merchant fleet was bringing food from Australia via India and then to Britain to build up the grain reserves, because we were expecting the war to continue for another couple of years, and we were just building up massive grain reserves, which we never used during the war. So there was that. There's the facts that the famine was predicted a couple of years beforehand, and Churchill continued to exploit, continued to take rice and other resources out of India right up to that point. Only when the famine got so bad did he finally stop doing it. There's also the facts that various allies attempted to send India food aid, including Canada. I know Canada attempted to do so. There was one of the chancellors involved who actually wrote about this in his diary, and the facts that they approached him at like a meeting, and then he got on the line and told Churchill, and Churchill went straight there and made sure that no, that food was redirected to Europe. It was like the ship was ready to go in the dock, and he redirected it back to Europe. And as a result, several million Bengalis died. And this is for a nation that supplied 2 million soldiers to the Second World War. They fought in every major theatre. They fought the Japanese, they fought the Nazis in Africa. They also helped liberate Italy and various other European countries, while the Mediterranean. They were in every major theatre, and we slaughtered several million of them for no justifiable reason. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. That was quite a bit of a tangent. But yeah.
Okay. I got a couple things to mention, but first, you know more about history than me. I'm not sure if peace love needs to be hidden or not.
Oh, so what?
In the chat, peace love, what they've said.
They do talk about it.
It seems iffy to me. I'm not sure.
Let's remove it for now, because yeah.
Okay. Just going back to when you said that, of course, conservatives love war, and because how dare you criticize the country? They also just love like mass murder, basically. I'm reminded of H-Bomb's 2017 election watch video, where he's like, "Will you kill millions, Jeremy? Will you kill millions? I'd love to vote for you, but as a Tory voter, I can't remember the whole bit. I'm sorry, but yeah, he basically summarized that a bunch of people were basically begging Jeremy Corbyn to say that he would bomb people unnecessarily for no reason. Yeah. Huge tangent. It is very tempting to just sit here and listen to you talk about history for it genuinely is, but
again, we cannot pretend that the First or even the Second World War was this glorious crusade. We did not attack Germany to save people from the concentration camps. We had reports far longer, and we knew everything was going on, and we didn't do anything. So it was not a noble cause to save the Jews from the concentration camps. It was just to fight back against Germany again, put Germany back in its place. They did a terrible thing. Let's spin ourselves as the glorious people who liberated everything. Forget the facts that we took the pink triangles, which were the trans and gay people from those concentration camps, and put them back in prison. It's just Like I if you go to my Facebook profile, there's actually a banner which I made, which had a poppy, I think in like 2011. Like, I used to, because again, all of my family, my history, like they've been military, and I've lost family in the First World War, and I've had family fight in the Second World War. You know, I've known all this. Like, there was that connection there, but over the years, it's just become more and more disillusioned about the fact of what's actually happened. On Duck Assault, America didn't care about the Jews. Yeah, the same for the UK. I mean, the Conservatives erected a statue to a vocal fucking Nazi, and no one said a thing. And it's you know, it's quite clearly absolute bullshit. Anyway, I think we kind of mined that topic. Again, the whole thing of poppies not being political, absolute balderdash. They are incredibly political. It is incredibly hurtful to many groups that have been personally hurt by the British military. So when you say poppies are okay, but Black Lives Matter and trans people, which, by the way, unlike poppies, which are like soldiers and veterans, okay, they're soldiers. I get that they're indoctrinated by a system, but they still have hurt people. They are still, you know, many of them are still guilty of various war crimes, etc. Trans
and they did
and black
technically
people,
choose to be soldiers.
They did choose to be soldiers.
You cannot be a soldier. You can't, if you're trans or black, you can't just not be that.
There is a degree of choice involved. I'm not completely like washing their hands of it. I am saying, however, there is a system involved that does pressure people, especially in places like America, where it's like, if you want education, go to war. But the thing
I'm not saying that like soldiers...
I just want to finish the point anyway. I just want to get around to finishing the point. The whole point is, black and trans people, the political nature of what's being discussed is their very existence. They've done absolutely nothing violent. Their existence is being debated. That's the difference here. Like, if there was any sort of justice in the world, black and trans lives would not be seen as political. The poppy would be questionable. If it was any way around. That's my personal perspective. I know Femi disagreed. Femi is like, I believe in what the poppy is. I believe it is good for raising money for like veterans, etc. Which like questions just how much the Conservative government actually cares about veterans if like they have to raise money for it. You know, why isn't the government taking care of the people it exploits for war? So, yeah.
Okay, Jamie J does make a good point about conscription. But like, it's still not on this. It's not like no one is born a soldier.
No one's born a soldier.
And like, my heart does go out to people who are conscripted. But it's not again, the same. Like, it's still not the same thing.
People coming from poor backgrounds in places like America. You want to go to college? Well, here's a way to do it. Fight for us. I studied alongside Jamie. She was she was someone who was involved with the wars in the Middle East. And she had just got her like ability to I can study wherever I want. I will study in the UK, and that's how I met her. She was an American. So yeah. Anyway, we should probably move on to the next topic.
One thing I did want to say quickly about the BBC is reading their social media guidelines. It did also kind of scare me just because of how draconian they are. Even if you're posting in a private group or you've locked down your personal account, you have to apply the same standards as if you're posting publicly. There's no difference between an official account and a personal account. Saying that this isn't the BBC's perspective doesn't protect you. Assume anything you're posting will be viewed critically. Like that, none of that sounds healthy. It sounds like if you work for the BBC, they own you and you're always on the job, and that really. That scares me. It just does not seem healthy at all for anyone working for them.
Ooh, we've had a £20 donation from the Gaming Archaeologist. Keep up the good work, Ethel. I never realised how much history was left out, especially the pink triangles. My grandfather was part of the Polish Second Corps. Thank you for that. That's very much appreciated. Hopefully we inform. I actually started a video on the Bengal famine, which is why I know so much, but I never quite found the right tone for it, and I'm wondering if that's because of I'm a white person. But like, we can't underestimate like just how hurtful a lot of the stuff can be, painful it can be. For example, one thing I've noticed a lot about British television is the fact that there's a lot of like time traveling stuff, and there's a lot of time traveling stuff that shows Churchill because they're quite an iconic figure, and a lot of them has been whitewashed as well. And it's like living with a Bengali and seeing how she reacts, how she tenses up every time she sees them presented in a purely positive like leadership role. It's quite telling just how much cross-generational scarring has been caused by events like the Bengal famine. So yes, next topic. Okay.
Timestamps.
Yes, I'm doing that. Thank you.
Good. I can't see if you're doing it because the video.
UK government launches inquiry into the GRA reform proposals and consultation. This one has been up and down, as with the other one. The Women and Equalities Committee official Twitter handle posted a series of tweets, I believe it was 4 tweets, noting the facts that they are, asking for evidence as to proposals for changes to the Gender Recognition Act and other trans equality issues. And they're just putting out this general call out. You have to November the 27th, by the way, if you'd like to get involved. It is the first link at the top of this point in the document, which is attached down below. Those who don't know, all of our stuff is referenced, is linked. There's a document at the bottom of the show description, which just is titled Links and Notes. Go to that, you'll find all the different categories, and there you will be able to find this link. It's the very first one under this story. Go there, and if you want to give evidence, you can do so. Again, it closes on November the 27th. Now, when everyone saw this, there was massive uproar by trans voices. People were responding by saying, we've been through this before. This is what the whole 2018 consultation was about. We supplied the evidence. We were consulted. The overwhelming majority of people supported changes to the Gender Recognition Act. For those who don't know, the Gender Recognition Act is the act responsible for allowing a trans person to change the birth marker on their birth certificate. The gender marker on their birth certificate. So, you can change it around. All this does is it allows them to then change it on specific government documents, such as pensions, tax forms, and marriage licenses. It does not have any impact whatsoever on a person's access to gendered spaces, such as bathrooms, domestic violence shelters, etc. That is protected under the 2010 Equalities Act, which does apply to those who have not undergone surgical procedures. It also applies to non-binary individuals, as was recently set as precedent. Right. But we still went through the whole reform, and the transphobes dragged everything out. They threw every tired trope at the sink. Stealing from the hate in America, they ran stories about how this is going to allow, people to identify, cis men to identify as women, to gain access to young girls and vulnerable women, and to do all sorts of things to them. This is the end of sex, that's the whole definition thing started by Posey Parker. So they just threw everything at it, and it thrust the trans community directly into the spotlight in the UK, and resulted in a massive increase in abuse in public spheres, and really the last few years have just been absolutely hell. Now, the consultation was done, and the vast majority of the British public supported GRA reforms, including the removal of the medicalisation behind the process. Because at current, what a person has to do, a trans person has to live as their gender for 2 years, which sounds simple enough. The problem is, what living as your gender entails depends significantly on your GP. If your GP is conservative and has rather toxic gendered expectations, if you're a trans woman who doesn't wear dresses, for example, or if you're a trans man who has long hair, that can result in you being rejected for a gender recognition certificate. So they were like, why are we medicalizing this purely legal process? It should just be a legal declaration, which is, sworn statement. So if you lie about it, you face trouble, by the way. It should just be a legal process, you change it, and that's that. The majority of people in the UK consulted supported this. So the government completely ignored that, led by Liz Truss, and decided to reduce the amount, the cost for getting a gender recognition certificate. That was it. They completely ignored it. They just nullified the whole reason we suffered for years to try and get people to listen to us. All of that abuse that we received as a community, for nothing. So, when the same committee stated that they were doing an inquiry, people were very quick to say, this is just the same thing on Reapy. That thankfully isn't the case. An inquiry is not a consultation. What's more is this inquiry is not led by the same team. It's also not led by Liz Truss. This is a trial-like process being carried out by the Women and Equality's Parliamentary Subcommittee, which is a cross-party committee of MPs headed by Caroline Noakes. It's not looking into whether, whether the GI reform is supported. It's looking into the failures of Liz Truss and her team. It's effectively putting Liz Truss on trial. Now, there's a little concern. The person leading it is a conservative, so there's always the concern that they might go light on Liz Truss. But the thing is, this is not as open as a consultation. Every piece of evidence will go through extreme levels of scrutiny. It will then be presented in a trial-like process, which will be viewable publicly on Parliament TV. And the people involved will all be asked to come to the stand, they'll be grilled, etc. So hopefully, this will result in Liz Truss being dragged over the coals for her absolutely horrific handling of the GRA reform, the consultation, etc. Sadly, it's going to take a few years, but it's not the same process as before. That's the main thing. So it's really important to sort of take that away from here. This information was all compiled brilliantly by What the Trans, which is a UK-based transgender news podcast, by the way. You should definitely go check them out. Again, links are all in the notes and links article, so you'll be able to find that there. But I do want to note one thing. The very way that the trans community responded to this should be taken as evidence of just how much harm Liz Truss and her handling of the consultation caused. Because the very fact that an inquiry into the failures of the government was met with such hostility and apathy from the very community it's meant to serve shows just how much the trust in the government, just how much trust in the government has been broken for the trans community. That even when it's promising to investigate the people who have hurt us, we're still hesitant as to whether this is going to be a good thing. Because as this goes on, understandably, the news is going to pick up around it. Likely it's going to present this whole thing as a McCarthy-style witch hunt of gender criticals in the British government. And we're probably in for another truckload of abuse, really. Yes. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think you summarized it very well.
I'm sorry. I'm doing this quite a lot. I get into a rant and I just keep on going. There's also the time going to be involved. This could take... It probably won't take weeks. It will take months to years to get sorted. So it's going to be a problem. So I just got to remove Michael Wetsby. We do not allow ableism on the channel. I'm just saying this. It seemed like a genuine mistake. The M word is not permitted. So yes.
I would also appreciate it if we didn't have ableism. I'm not keeping a good enough eye on the chat.
That's not a problem.
Sorry.
I'm trying to do that. But I've kind of got like I glaze over when I go onto a rant. So.
I actually did a thread on Twitter about this recently. Stop attributing bigotry to disabilities or whatever you perceive as stupidity or insanity or any of that. It's not that. It's because we live in a bigoted society which teaches bigotry to people because it thrives on bigotry. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with mental illness or neurodivergence. Stop doing it. You cannot be a leftist and throw neurodivergent people and disabled people under the bus.
Because all you do, it doesn't hurt the people that you're trying to insult. It hurts people like me and Levi. I have disabilities. Levi has disabilities. You know, we're also both neurodivergent as well. So it's like all it does is it makes us feel like.
To put this in perspective for you. I've been struggling so much this past week because my brain just hasn't been working. Like you've heard me speaking on this stream and maybe on previous streams if you've seen them. You know that I'm not a quote unquote stupid person. You know I can be articulate. You know I can understand things. It wasn't until this afternoon I finished my notes for this stream just because my brain wasn't working for the whole week. It just wouldn't work, and I tried really hard, and it was like being like. I don't know if it's like being drunk because I've never been drunk before, but I think it was like being drunk where things just weren't working. And even when I try and slow down and think through them carefully, it still just didn't work. And it's very scary and very frustrating. And when you just use intelligence and stuff like that as insults, it really does hurt people who do struggle with not being able to function just for no reason, like me.
That's
I feel kind of bad
basic lesson 101. We're sorry to concentrate so much on this, but it's like a standard we want to set for the show. Again, I don't think you were using it to be edgy or anything like that, but like now that you've been told, any language which is ableist, racist, transphobic, homophobic, all the stuff, you know.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I do feel kind of bad. Like we're kind of putting this one person in the spotlight.
It's not just you, Michael. We're just saying it's not just you. Yeah. Okay, you're a learning point for everyone else.
We're not mad at you.
That's fine. You shouldn't be texting whilst driving. I'm just saying. That's
actually very illegal where I live.
Yeah.
You're not even allowed to touch a phone in Australia when you're in a car.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I should take the timestamp. 1:55. Would you like to lead on to the next topic, or?
The next topic is Biden, isn't it? Which I'm not exactly sure how to start with that one. So.
Okay.
I've got my story. You can have this one.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just doing the timestamp quickly, and then I'll be with you. We should organise these to stagger these actually. Yeah, this is quite a short one. Some of those of you viewing from America, first of all, thank you for being here so early. I know some of you like saying that we're up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Thank you for joining us, but this story is kind of on what's been happening with you. I'm sure many of you are aware by now that one of the rallies that Joe Biden did, there was a woman by the name of Mieke Hayek, a 42-year-old mother, a mother of a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old child. Now the thing is, the 8-year-old child is also trans. And so she went to the thing and she asked him, how will you, as president, reverse this dangerous and discriminatory agenda and ensure that the lives and the rights of LGBTQ people are protected under the US law?
She the mother, not she the child, to be clear.
Yes, she the mother. To which Biden responded by pledging to protect the community. Now, we'll come to that later. But as is natural for the far right, whenever someone asks something reasonable, they take it and they completely warp it out of context. It was very quick that the videos started appearing and the news stories started appearing. Headlines boasting that Joe Biden promotes surgery for 8-year-olds. Of course, and the fact that the mother was identified by name meant it was only a matter of time before the bigots out there had tracked her down, and she began receiving incredible amounts of abuse, death threats that they were going to kidnap her children. And it really does show like just how difficult it is. Even if you're just trying to ask basic questions about like your child's potential status in the future of your country, just asking that question, asking, you know, will you fight transphobia and other forms of discrimination in this country? That results in so much abuse for the people who do so. Because we've got to keep this in mind for like the fact that people don't always feel like they want to get involved, and this is exactly why. This case reminds me a lot of the baker story that happened several years ago. For those who don't know, anytime you hear the question, should a Christian be forced to bake a cake for a gay couple? That's a fallacious question. That is not the actual case they are referring to. What actually happened in that case is a gay couple were getting married because they wanted to adopt the children of friends who had passed away. And they decided, since we're doing it, let's do it right, let's go out and get a cake. And they went to the baker, who subsequently turned them away. So they complained. I can't remember if they complained directly to the baker or if they complained to a third-party service, which then forwarded the complaint to the baker. But the baker then went ahead and published the family's actual address online. So what happened is all of the right-wing groups came together, and again, they harassed that family to the point that they had to move town. They couldn't stay in the same town. That's what the cake lawsuit was about. It was nothing to do about the actual baking a cake. It was about all of the violence that had been targeted towards them because they complained about what had happened.
Reminds me also of what happened with Susie Green, where that journalist said a lot of derogatory things about
how she was a predator
Green for
and
supporting her daughter. And then she went to the police, and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, you went to the police about misgendering," and
it's like,
no.
There's a lot of other stuff that's like context that's sort of been removed.
Yeah.
So this is what the right does. This is how they rewrite every story. So it's something worth keeping in mind, because I have no doubt that this story is going to stick around, just like the case of Damon? Is it Luna Damon?
Luna Damon Younger.
Luna Damon Younger has stuck around. I have no doubt that we will for years be hearing about Joe Biden and this liberal mother forcing child to be trans. I've no doubt that's going to happen. So just be aware of the story and what actually happens. They simply asked, is my child going to be protected? Biden said yes, or he pledged to do it. And subsequently, the right has just gone to do everything they can to make that family's life a misery, which includes the children, which they pretend to care about. I mean, could you imagine being a child in that situation where you're being threatened to be kidnapped, your mother's being threatened to be murdered? That's not protection. Like, we have to acknowledge that as well. So yeah.
Actually, interesting. There's no... Okay, so I actually know what it's like to be threatened with kidnapping as a child, and it's really not fun.
Yeah.
It's not. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. Yeah.
So anyway, since we're talking about Joe Biden, because it's not something we really wanted to do, I guess I should just kind of disclaimer this. I've kind of kept mum about my thoughts on Joe Biden during most of the election cycle. When someone's tried to undermine Tara Reid, I've spoken up, because that's the right thing to do. But I've kept a tight lip because anytime you speak out against Joe Biden, it's always been a case of, well, by being critical of Joe Biden, you're effectively working to elect Trump. It's like, thankfully, that will all soon be over. It seems like Biden is going to win, at which point our work is not over. Our work has just begun. If Biden is elected, the very first thing we need to do is get rid of Biden. I'm not joking though, I'm being serious. That is the only way people are going to start to repair the damage that has been done to survivors of sexual assault by constantly, for months, telling them that they either have to vote for the liberal rapist, otherwise the fascist rapist will win. That's the only way to start doing that. And that's not to forget the other issues, such as the fact that we need someone who's willing to abolish the current concentration camps in the UK under ICE, and also start defunding police. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Biden hasn't won yet, but he seems to be set to win.
Also, all the votes cast, so it's not like criticizing him is gonna...
Nothing's gonna change.
I'll make him unwin if he's won.
But there will be one person who says, you're wanting Trump to win this. It's like, no. Something I've seen online, for all you leftist trans people out there, to know who's safe to be around, watch, if Biden wins, watch to see who's celebrating Biden winning versus who's celebrating Trump losing. The ones that are celebrating Trump losing could be either way, but if they're celebrating Biden winning, be very careful around them. Just be cautious. So yes.
I know you weren't joking. It's just the glib way you say it.
I know.
It's very funny to me. You don't have to apologize for.
I have to apologize for everything.
Why do you do this to me?
So yeah.
I did want to make one tangential point since we're talking about Biden being a fucking rapist. Is you know how people back when Bernie was talking about giving criminals the right to vote, and everyone was saying, You want to give criminals the right to vote? Even the rapists and the mass murderers? I just realized after way too long, it's like, you want to give rapists and mass murderers the right to vote? You mean like the ones that are in the White House? Because every US president ever has been a mass murderer by virtue of the job. And the last 4 years, we've had a rapist. And no matter which way this election goes, for the next 4 years, we'll have a rapist in the White House. So, that's just interesting to me is we don't want rapists to have the right to vote, but we do want them in the White House.
It's just, this is quite horrific. But it has been fun to see some of like the results on who got elected as senator. All of the like liberal, we don't support Medicare for all have been ousted, and it seems like most of the Democrat senators that have been elected are all ones that support Medicare for all. It's almost like the Biden party should have played more to policy than actual personality. That the whole, we're not Donald Trump, isn't much of a selling point. Like, people think you vote Trump or you vote Biden, but they forget the fact that there's also induced apathy. Like, you reach a point where the world is so shitty that you're just like, I could get involved and like be hurt every second, or I can just concentrate on my family, I can just concentrate on my friends, on self-care, etc. And I think that's what's probably happened to a lot of survivors of rape in this. I think a lot of them have just, at one point or another, just had to turn themselves off to everything that's been going on. So yeah. That's the depressing state of things. So I will take the timestamp, and you can lead into the next topic.
Yes, okay. So I didn't even know about this until yesterday. I had to go to my GP to get my tea prescription sorted out, and she's just like, "Oh yeah, did you hear? The Lord Mayor said some really transphobic stuff on the radio." So that's what we're talking about. So Basil Zemplus, the Lord Mayor of Perth, barely a week after being elected, has made some transphobic comments on the morning radio. Why was he even on the morning radio? Is because he's basically just a sports commentator who, for some reason, we elected to be in charge of our central business district, which Australian politics. But yeah, he said some very transphobic things. He said, if you have a penis, then you're a man. If you've got a vagina, you're a woman. Game over. He said that there are more redheads listening to 6PR than there are hermaphrodites, quote unquote. When he was asked how he would handle a constituent who is a woman but has a penis, he asked, handle the penis, which, if you watched last week, is the same trans misogyny that we saw in the CD Projekt Red story. It's just everywhere. And he also offered a $100 Retrovision voucher to any woman with a penis who called the show. And this actually pisses me off that trans men weren't included, because I would have loved to call up and explain to him how he's extremely cowardly for only offering $100. Basil, you coward. Like, we both know if a trans person called up, you would say they don't count, because you're saying by definition anyone with a penis isn't a woman and anyone with a vagina isn't a man. Why would you only offer $100? I want you to offer $1 million, and then I can call up, and then you have to give me $1 million. Basil, you coward.
For those who don't know, the H word is a outdated and derogative term. Is derogative the word one? That's a prerogative.
Derogatory. Yeah.
Derogatory term for intersex people.
And it's also just very inaccurate to trans people. We're not half male and half female. I mean, unless you want to identify that way, which that's not what he means.
As discussed in the last show, the transphobe's mind just tends to blur these things together. Until we start to use the facts that people with differences in sex development kind of disprove the sex binary, at which point they're completely irrelevant and no one should bring them up whatsoever.
I thought the line was that everyone is either completely male or completely female. So trans people are a mix, but intersex people aren't, which I don't understand. I don't get it. But yeah, he received a lot of backlash. It's just, wow, beautiful.
That's a good thing to say.
Yeah, Retrovision really weren't happy to be associated with the incident. Now, they're a corporation, so take everything they say with a lot of salt, but they claim to be very firm supporters of the LGBTIQ+ community. So when their voucher was being offered up by this transphobe for this transphobic test, they were basically like, we're not with him. We are not with him. No, thank you. We don't want to be involved in this. And then the Telethon Institute were really unhappy. And I forgot to research this beforehand. So tell me, Ethel, is Telethon a thing that you've heard of, or is it possibly an Australian thing?
I don't know. You're asking the wrong person to see if it's something that I'm aware of, because I'm not someone with a great cultural connection. Have
you heard of Telethon, the charity?
I have not.
Okay, it's probably an Australian thing. So Telethon is a charity that does independent medical research. They do, from what I understand, have like a general one that does it for like adults, but they also have a big presence with this separate thing of, not separate, but like they have telethon kits, and that's the main thing you will see advertised when you go to shops. There's like coin collections for it. And they do research for children. So this is basically a children's charity that does medical research, basically. They were really unhappy because Zemplis specifically has hosted a lot of their fundraising events over the years. And Zemplis also works for 7 West Media as a popular, prominent presenter and columnist. And 7 West Media is one of Telethon's big sponsors. So they were suddenly being, associated with this transphobia, when Telethon Kids is currently researching transphobia. So they were really not happy. They were very graceful about it, and they've invited Zemplis to the Telethon Institute to learn a bit more and educate himself. There have been quite a few demands from both individuals and organizations like Telethon Kids and LGBT advocacy groups asking him to educate himself, which has been really good. There was also a petition launched asking for Perth's Pride Fest to move out of the central business district and into the neighboring city of Vincent. And what I find quite funny is because of how small Perth is, they're basically moving like 2 streets over. It's like sidestepping and just being like, okay, we're in the city of Vincent now. I haven't seen any confirmation that is happening, but there is a push for that to happen, which is cool.
Okay.
And also within hours of this whole thing happening, the Perth Scorpions Volleyball Club launched a petition demanding Zemplis to stand down as mayor. And the rugby team, Perth Rams, has also condemned him. If you were watching, I keep saying last week, if you're watching last fortnight, I talked a bit about transphobia and rugby, and I said that like the national and state and local and grassroots sort of groups, I think are going to be very trans affirming, even though World Rugby isn't. So that's really encouraging, I think, as well. And Zemplis has been very harshly criticized by LGBT plus advocacy groups. Many West Australians are protesting. They have some really great chants. And he's also even been condemned in the international news, even though the Lord Mayor of Perth is actually not really in charge of anything. Like the central business district, it's really tiny. It doesn't really do much. I'm surprised that this has international coverage. So in response to all this backlash, Zemplis tried to apologize. He said, for a moment, I forgot I was Lord Mayor of the city of Perth. So I don't know if this is clear to everyone or if there's like cultural things in the way, but like he's very clearly saying that he's sorry he forgot people outside his old boys club now care about what he says. Go Scorpions and go Rams. I agree, Goza. I agree. He's very clearly very sorry that now that he's the mayor, people of from all kinds of backgrounds are listening to him, people of all kinds of identities, and they expect basic respect now. He can't get away with just being in his old boys club where he can say horrible things about people.
So pretty much
he's no repercussions.
So pretty much he's sorry for being called out.
He's not sorry he did it. He's sorry he got caught out. And he tried claiming that what he said didn't reflect how he felt, but very luckily no one is buying it. So it has been very encouraging. The support the trans community has had both within Western Australia and on all over the world has been amazing. It's been so great to see people show up for trans people like this. But in researching this, there's also a bit of a sour note in that in researching this, I learned that Zemplis has also made some comments about the homeless, and the support for the homeless, unfortunately, has not been as strong. He vowed to clean up the Hay and Murray Streets malls and the surrounding areas forcibly if necessary. So he's threatened to use like physical violence to banish homeless people from his jurisdiction when they need his help. And like this has been acknowledged, but it's really only been a footnote in these transphobia stories. And I can't help but see a bit of unfairness in the reporting. Zemplis has been openly transphobic for less than a month, and only after he was elected, after it was too late, after we couldn't change our minds now that we see his true colors. And even then, there's been so much effort to remove him on that basis. But he's been openly anti-homeless for 2 years, and he was elected anyway. And despite all of that, only the Transphobia has international coverage. There's like 2 articles about the anti-homelessness, and there's 6 or more about the transphobia. And it is a bit disappointing. Because the thing is, as much as Zemplis' transphobia is harmful, it feeds into transphobic culture, and that does come back and harm people eventually. Anyone in his constituency is going to feel a bit iffy. Anyone trying to work in politics in Perth is going to have trouble. there is harm there, but he can't do that much to hurt trans
Yeah.
people. As a Western Australian trans person, I'm no worse off after finding out about this than I was before I found out about it. I'm no worse off than I was a month ago before it happened. He doesn't have institutional power over us. He can't take hormones out of our hands. He can't force us onto the streets. He can't deny us legal recognition. He's only the man. He can't really do anything. But for the homeless, he will literally kill them.
Yeah.
Whether he forces them out of the streets openly, or does it surreptitiously through something like hostile architecture, or simply does nothing at all and just leaves these inadequate supports as they are, a lot of homeless people are going to suffer and potentially die. And I just can't help but think, based on the reaction we've had to the transphobia, what if he had said he was going to remove trans people from the Hay and Murray Street malls by force? And I think we need to bring that same energy and that same outrage we would have for that to these comments and this mistreatment of the homeless. I'm not saying that the outpouring of support for trans people is wrong. We do definitely need to keep doing that. And we need to keep working until Zemplis is forced to stand down and, maybe even until he's removed from 7 West Media, we need to make it clear that transphobia is not acceptable and this is non-negotiable. But we need to have that same energy for other issues, especially more pressing issues like homelessness. And like this story has shown me that there's a certain interest in trans issues and trans people that other marginalized groups don't have. And I think trans people could use that interest to uplift other groups and issues that are being neglected.
Yeah.
And so I hope we can say, okay, what we're doing about the transphobia is great. Keep doing that. How about we also do that for the homeless at the same time? We have kind of seen that in the protest chants, and I think we could do a lot more.
That's a very valid position to have and to forward. It's certainly something that we should work to live by. So yeah.
But on the left, we do try to help each other as marginalized groups.
Yes, contrary to what the right likes to say, like the groups can work together, and there are signs of that. Like we saw how the Black Lives Matter groups in America, how they reacted to homeless issues, etc. as well. And in general, like the shootings of white people, like the Black Lives Matter groups also spoke on that because isn't it something that impacts Black Lives Matter, and that's important, but also it does impact other people. And they were the ones speaking out about it. The people who weren't were the fascists who were going, why aren't they talking about this? And it's like, but yes.
It actually really does. Okay, like here's the thing is, the Central Business District is somewhere I go quite a lot. It's like the Hay Street Mall is where I walk into when I get out of the train station. So these are places I've seen these homeless people. I don't have coins in my wallet because I keep giving them to homeless people, and every time I do, I just keep thinking I wish I could do more, because giving them the money I can spare isn't really going to do anything. We need systemic change, but I just didn't know how to do that because I was never taught how politics works, and this has made me realize like here's an opening to do that. And I'm thinking like that we can.
The status quo doesn't want you politically equipped, though.
No, the status quo does not want us politically equipped. But I'm just thinking like we've had a lot of progress on the trans issues, and we're so close to getting our way, and it just I can see so many possibilities.
Yeah. Anyway, so with that stated, I will take a timestamp, 28:13, and we shall move on to the last few topics, which are thankfully a little more happier. The first comes from the state of Assam, which has changed the civil service applications to allow trans applicants. Civil services refers to government-based jobs. It can be at any sort of level. And for the longest time, it has been incredibly difficult for trans people to get in and be accepted. Because there's no real centralized policy on the acceptance of them. So Assam came along and added as a distinct gender category transgender, which has allowed 42 trans people to apply. There were 42 trans people waiting to apply for civil service jobs, and now that they have this category, they can. I know it's different to how we typically talk about things in like the West, in the facts that this isn't a case of they can tick trans and their gender. They can only tick transgender. But the thing is, for where the rest of the country is and where it's been so far, this has been seen as a progressive step. Let's get trans people in, let's get them into the government jobs where they meet people, they meet policymakers, they become policymakers, etc. And then we can start to like improve the language around it, sort of thing. So it is that first initial step, and it's been really welcomed. Because there are cases, like there's actually a case in Kerala in which a trans woman has been denied access to her college's NCC unit. NCC is the National Cadet Corps, which is like the military links that each college has. She was denied access to her college on the basis that she was trans. And she's had to now move things up to the Kerala High Court in order to challenge this. So for Assam to go ahead and to like accommodate trans people, allowing these 42 people I hope are going to get through, I hope they're going to get the jobs they want. Again, this is all tiers of jobs. That is a big victory over here. So it's very welcome. It's something that's filling a lot of people with hope for the future, and like this Kerala case and how that might go. The trans bill that passed recently, I say recently, 2019, wasn't particularly great. I've got a video on that on the channel. So yes, it's nice to see it, and to see the photos of the people in the article like really happy, getting ready to to apply for their jobs now. So there's not much more I can really say about that. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to that. It's just a nice, good feel story. Progress is being made. So I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
Not really.
That. Okay. I will take the last timestamp, 31:35. Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just like you summarize them really well, and then there's nothing I need to add.
I don't think so. I think I meander quite a bit. I think I kind of like wander all over the place. But then again, sometimes that's important. Like I mention the colonialism of World War I and World War II, but I didn't actually go into detail. Okay, let's go into detail about it. The second story, which again comes from India and actually comes from quite close, comes from Noida. If you don't know, Delhi is a huge megacity, and there's a river that cuts down along the eastern side of it, and that's where the city ends. The city ends at that river, and across that river you have the city of Noida. The only thing that stops Noida being absorbed into the megacity, like every other city around it, is the fact that, again, it's across the river, and that river is also a state marker. It's a UP. I'm trying to remember what UP is. I think I had it written down, didn't I? I had this. No, I didn't have this. Okay. I'm going to have a double look. Upper...
Hang on, sorry. There's a lot of people saying about my point. Oh, there's this intersection of being trans and being homeless, right? And like, yes, and that is one reason to care. But I really want to emphasize we should care just because homelessness is a problem and because no one should be homeless. I understand like wanting to focus on trans issues, but we also need to care about everyone just in general, I think. And if we care about homeless people because regardless of whether or not they're trans, even if they're not trans, then they can care about trans people even if they're not trans, and we can kind of have a massive amount of support we wouldn't usually have.
The state is Uttar Pradesh that actually Noida belongs to, but it's still connected to the metro, to Delhi's metro, which, underground tube. Some of it's above ground as well, so it's a mixed rail. What they've done is they've taken one of their old stations and they have renamed it Pride Station in honor of the trans community. They've also hired 6 trans members of staff in the process of this. Now that might not sound like much. These are different ticket conductors, etc. It might not sound like much, but you have to sort of also understand the social context of India. And that's the fact that the perception of trans people is tightly associated with the, tightly associated with the Hijra community. They're not the same, there is a distinction, but the Hijra community is very often seen as sort of the go-to of trans imagery in India. It's what they think of when they hear it. And a lot of the Hijra are beggars. They travel around, they do different services, they offer blessings. There's a sort of special religious sentiment to the Hijra. It's kind of strange. They're kind of revered, but they can also be subject to a lot of hostility. The way that I can probably think about it is that they share a lot of similarities with the Romani in Europe, in how they're kind of seen as like offering the spiritual sort of guidance or role, but at the same time there's like a lot of superstition and rumors about it. For example, Hijra are very often some of the first people targeted in witch hunts because there's a lot of suspicion about Hijra curses and all that. But again, they're very often seen as like not being in employed jobs, in doing blessings, begging, selling things on the street. So for them to get stable jobs in a railway, which is named in their honor, that's kind of a big step for them. It's a sign that there is mobility for them. They can get these jobs, they can be welcome, and they can be respected as well. Like, I've had my issues with the metro because as a trans person, the metro can be quite a scary place. The metro here, going through the metro is like going through TSA airport security. You have to put your bag on an X-ray and you have to go through a metal detector, just like you do at an airport. They're very efficient at it, so it doesn't take as long as it does in an airport. But yes, you have to do that every time you enter the building. You have to do that. They do the same thing with malls over here. And the thing is, they have armed guards stationed at each of the entry points. And the weapons are visible. They sit behind these bomb screens slightly away from where the pat-downs are done. So it's like, it can be very nerve-wracking, especially considering the lines are gendered. And if you pick the wrong queue, they like to challenge you on it quite verbally and vocally. And that can lead to a rather stressful moment where I forget every word that I know in Hindi, and I'm being yelled at by someone, and I'm just like looking over the guy with the gun behind the bomb screen going, is he going to think that I'm doing something, offhand, that I'm reaching for something, or I've got something in my bag. So yeah, that's sort of, there's a lot of tension. The Metro has pledged that, like, if people identify as this, they're allowed through whichever gender queue they require. There's not been so much implementation of that, though. I've not seen. Again, I tend to still avoid the Metro. But seeing an entire station being renamed in the honor of trans people, seeing trans people being hired, hopefully that will act as like a hub, a central point for like more trans inclusive sort of approaches to people being, applied, etc., which will then hopefully disperse throughout the rest of the metro, because I see they like move around workers whenever workers are needed in different places. So yeah, hopefully it's a sign of good things to come. But yeah, it's just really nice. Like, I know the renaming is symbolic, but the actual going out of their way to hire applicants. There's a sad note to the article, which is the fact that as some people became aware of it, they'd already hired all of their spaces that they had open. So some people are like still turning up asking, hey, do you have an opening for trans people? And they're like, sadly, we don't anymore. Hopefully they'll like make the call out for future jobs in other stations. That'd be nice. But yeah, it's just moving forward with things in general. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say on that.
Not really. Although I do want to thank Cassiopeia. Before I was trying to think of a word. The word was solidarity. Thank you for reminding me. Solidarity. We need solidarity with other groups.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And that's really it for the show. I mean, no one wanted to call in. I forgot to mention that they could do that at the start. We'll be here for a few minutes. If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask us, any points that you'd like to go back to, me and Levi would be quite happy to do that. Otherwise, in probably about 5 minutes of passing, we'll probably just wrap up and end the show there. Hopefully the show has been good. I'm sorry I went on some quite large tangents there, and I know I said a lot of things. I went on quite a few rants today. But hopefully...
Ethel, sweetie, the whole point of the stream is to make content, and you made a lot of interesting content. Why are you apologizing?
I guess the thing is to show the full range of transhumanity, and that was to include anger, sorrow, all of this. No tone policing. We're allowed to do these things. And the only one I refuse to allow to live by that is myself.
You see what I have to deal with, internet. You see what I have to deal with.
Yeah, so that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. Is like everyone else, I won't let you like question their humanity and they're being angry at the fact that you're exploiting their humanity. But when it comes to me, different standard. But yes, the fact that hopefully people enjoyed it. No questions so far, so I guess we'll just keep talking about a few things. I guess I could talk about the next video. The next video is going to be a response to a conservative Christian propaganda video. So that will be out next week, about halfway through on the initial script. I think actually more than halfway. I've got 2 more main chunks, then the conclusion to do, and that's really it. Oh, I've also got to do the positives of allowing a person to socially transition. That's one thing I've got to do on the last point that I'm currently working on. So yeah, hopefully that'll be done. Then I can get it over to Levi to be edited, and then I can get it recorded and posted. Hopefully it won't be the same panic as last week, in which I was working right up to the time. If I'd missed the time, I would have just posted it on Sunday, but I really wanted to get it out on Saturday, just so I can be kind of regular. As for the regularity of the shows, how are they doing for everyone? Is it a good pace with the show being once every fortnight? When it comes to sort of topics, are we covering a decent range of topics? How's our style of presenting? Are we doing enough detail, too much detail, too little detail? The weird class reductionist crap on Twitter. I think you sum it up there as crap quite sufficiently. Like a lot
Didn't our Thought Slime do a really good video on it?
Yes. I'm trying to remember what exactly was said.
There was the video on class reductionism, and then there was the Moppin response and the response to that, which is even better. I've watched that Moppin response so many times. Wouldn't it be really embarrassing for you? It's great. I'm sorry, Thought Slime is one of the few channels I still watch. I don't really watch YouTube anymore. I watch Essence of Thought once to edit the transcript because I have to. And then I watch Thought Slime sometimes, and that's basically it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole events of 2019 kind of disillusioned a lot of people, I feel. Class reductionism just ignores so much. Like, we can't ignore the fact that social aspects played, like, the identity aspects played a part in creating the class. like there's a reason. Black people, trans people, disabled people, these are all people that are more likely to be impoverished. You can't just ignore that fact and what causes it.
Actually, okay, so mentioning like class and race reminds me of a conversation I was having with a friend a couple of days ago, where you know how people keep saying, "Oh, racism, like systemic racism, isn't a thing."
Mm-hmm.
My friend, when they were a toddler, thought that all black people were poor and all white people were rich, just because that's what they saw. But race and class are definitely not connected. There's no such thing as systemic racism. I hate centrists.
Yeah. And like by saying, oh, we should concentrate only on class, but not actually look into what creates the class. What that part of the it's the dirtbag left who does it pretty much. What the dirtbag left is doing there is pretty much identical to what liberals are doing to leftism. In ignoring all the greater scale of the problems. You're just reducing it down to like a singular aspect. Oh, liberals say you just need to vote. Oh, the dirtbag left just says you need to, deal with classism. You're ignoring a lot of the issues that impact people's lives, a lot of the issues which are going to get voters through the doors. If you start posturing yourself positively rather than negatively in the count of, well, I'm not the fascist. If your selling point is, I'm not the fascist, that's a red flag. That's not a positive. That is a red flag. If that... The flag just fell down. I didn't pin the middle of the flag. That is a red flag. It's as if God has parted the waves. And it's done it so aesthetically as well.
I'm just waiting for the video to catch up so I can see. There it is.
The aesthetics. Oh, that is just...
It's a good thing you got the black bit up behind the flags.
Yes, I do always have the black bit at the back. But yes, anyway, that is a red flag. Speaking of flags, that is a red flag. If that's the only thing, if that's your go-to, that's the problem.
I'm mad now. I'm mad that the black flag behind the other flags isn't red.
Yes, if that was red, that would have been so good.
It would have been so good.
But yeah.
Why isn't it red? You love red. Why?
I just didn't get the red one. I have a black one. I have a green. I have two green ones actually. I have the smaller green screen and the largest green screen. The smaller green screen became a blanket. Because I upgraded.
That reminds me. It's not related anyway. That reminds me is one of the. I have to steal half your flags. Now that they both apply to me.
Okay. So yes, I think I haven't seen any of your questions there. I guess the people could be questioners. So I guess it's kind of a good place to end. Thank you all for turning up. If you appreciate what we do, donating, it always helps. We no longer monetize our videos via advertising. We did this just to the stress of having to go through the monetization process and how YouTube was just messing everything up and just the stress it creates. If you like to support us, you can support us by one-off super chats or via the link that keeps coming past every now and then. Or you can of course support us on Patreon. Patreon is a monthly subscription service. You gain early access to videos, etc. So yes, you also get your name in the titles if you donate enough money, or your name read out at the end of videos if you donate enough. All money goes back into the working of the channel, keeping things running, feeding us. People need food to do work. This is my full-time job. I spend my week going between working on a video, scripting the video, getting the video out, doing the show, getting the topics for the show, detailing the show, getting the show ready. So yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add, Levi?
Please donate to the channel because everyone needs food, even birds. Bird needs seeds, but there isn't enough money for Bird to have seed. I'm doing this all voluntarily. Luckily, I'm currently in a position where I have enough money for seed, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
It would be nice to actually offer you an employment role at some point. Like,
It'd also be nice because right now I'm going to this employment agency and I'm going to this disability agency, and they keep saying, "Oh, you work as an editor for this YouTube channel. Have you thought about getting a real job as a real editor?" And everyone's like, "Oh, so you do advocacy work on this YouTube channel?" It's like, no, I do actual proper work on this YouTube channel. And it's just. Why isn't this recognized under capitalism? Because capitalism is trash.
Like that was one of the things where, like, I want to be part of the channel. It's like, I don't have the money to pay you right now. I was like, no, I have the ability to do this right now. I want to do it. I'm bored to death. It's like, okay, I'll let you tear apart my scripts. But yeah.
Yep. I survive on seeds and torn paper. That's what I eat.
Yeah. But yes, so it'd be nice to actually get you, like, we can sponsor you, and who knows, maybe move to a different country. But yes, anyway, thank you all for tuning in. It has been greatly appreciated. Thanks all of those in particular who have joined from America. I know it's incredibly early where you are. When we did the show, we were just like, we could do it super late for us, but that would be a hassle, so let's just do it like it'll be there for people afterwards. So but yes, I will update the thing.
Last two streams are also there.
I will update the description with all the timestamps, so if you ever want to come back and watch a specific thing, you can come do that. Don't forget to share the stream around. Like, new people watching helps it grow, helps it get recognized, also helps get the information out there. Hopefully you think the information that is contained in the show is worth sharing. So again, share it out there, get it out there. And yes, I think with that, we're done. So final time, thank you for watching. Take care, and bye.
Bye.